Hey everyone, welcome to another segment of Reviewing Your Music. I'm going to be Ben, appreciate it. I'm going to be going through some submissions. We're getting over our Twitch page from viewers, from fans who want me to take on some of their tracks. This first one in a line of reviews and reactions that we're going to do, XTC, thank you. This first one is going to be from Grahamx. State of Mind is the track. State of Mind is the cut. Let's give it a try and see what is up. Hey, thank you for the raid. Appreciate it. Okay. One thing I also want to note before I get into this and remind you guys, this segment is about, giving thoughts, giving perspective, giving advice, and thank you to everybody who's been subbing over the course of this. It's not about making fun of or bullying anybody. Not that I'm about to do that to Grahamx over here, but just to remind you, the point of this segment is not to be mean to anybody or make fun of anybody's abilities or music, because everybody's got to start somewhere. All right. First things on that track that I think could be smoothed out. I think that on the beat, that clap could be lower. That clap is a little aggressive. It's like, really kind of popping out in the mix and not the best way, especially considering how smooth every other element of the beat is. The vocals could certainly be a little more crisp as well, though that could have a lot to do with the microphone you're using. Maybe you don't have the most expensive setup or mic or something, or maybe you could EQ it and bring the treble a little higher so the vocals pop a little bit better. You seem to sing in a somewhat, muted kind of inflection or tone. And as a result of that, I think it's, a little easy for the vocals to kind of get maybe more buried in the mix than they should. But still, I liked the vocal melodies that were being sung on the track. And I thought the rap verse on, the first leg was pretty cool. I thought the vocal lines on the back end were nice as well, though I think if you overdubbed those, they would pop a little bit better. Same line, sing it over, put it underneath it, maybe offset it by like a few fractions of a second, and you'll get a nice, layered pop by doubling them up a little bit. I would say the one vocal passage I wasn't too crazy about was just that auto-tune section in the middle, which, not that I'm against the auto-tune or anything, but I feel like around that point of the song, we really needed a starker change or something that we didn't quite get. And instead we just kind of, opted for the auto-tune vocal passage, which was kind of spacey and not as engaging as every other part of the song. I will say though, I loved that vocal sample. I loved the keys. The groove was great. Maybe just kind of a tighter low end instead of like hitting with those heavy, like 808s with a lot of sustain. Again, maybe just something like tighter and lighter on the ears as far as the low end goes would have been a more optimal choice for something that's kind of intimate, because it does sound like a very intimate song, it does sound like a very intimate track, which doesn't necessarily, like lend itself to rumbling bass, even though I could kind of tell that you weren't trying to turn it up too high, maybe just like a tighter kick, or, a synth bass line or something would have been a nice touch. But outside of that, I thought it had a lot of good qualities going to it. It's a very intimate, melancholy, I guess, in your feels type of track. And, I think there were some elements of the vocal performance that could have been, maybe another take would have done you better if you listen back to this and you sort of, see the notes that you're not hitting quite as hard as you could. But there is something certainly about, kind of the DIY bedroom sort of quality about it that is certainly attractive and endearing. You know what I mean? That's not to say that everything needs to be super perfect or on the money in terms of like, technicals and fundamentals. Because, lo-fi and bedroom and so on and so forth is a thing. So not to take anything, away from the track completely on the vocal end. But overall, yeah, I thought this was a pretty decent cut, sweet on the ears. And I liked it. I think there's some edges that can be smoothed out, but certainly a decent track. Hi, I'm Chris, NothingButLag, and FrankJavCee, Depression Nap. I don't think I've heard this track before. I do know FrankJavCee, though. I'm not familiar with his involvement in this track, though. Let's give this track a try and see what it's got to offer.
Struggle here. Taking up all your money.
Okay. All right. Thoughts on that one? Again, Depression Nap. From Hi, I'm Chris, Nothing But Lag, FrankJavCee. And I mean, obviously I'm familiar with Frank, but he just had kind of a bit of a feature on the back end. Nothing But Lag and Hi, I'm Chris. I'm unfamiliar with those two artists generally as far as I know. The most standout, or I guess the best aspects of the track that I don't necessarily have a lot to add to because I think they're quite good as is. Structure and songwriting really good. The transitions and momentum kind of changing from intro to hook to verse to hook to guest verse to, hook to guest verse was really good. Track had a very consistent vibe. Thought the instrumental was really good. The dreamy keys were really well placed. Window Girl, appreciate it. The beat didn't exactly pop, but the groove it presented was very present. And given the tone of the track, I don't know if you want necessarily on this kind of song like a beat that's really like banging you over the head. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a melancholy, laid back, introspective kind of tune. And so, I mean, I think the beat did what it was supposed to do. And that horn line, well, I don't know where that horn line came from. Original, sampled, Caspa, appreciate it. You always come through. Either way, that horn line was killer. That was a really good horn line. It had a vintage, sweet, 70s kind of flavor to it. Gulid, thank you. Almost like sounded like a horn line that you catch on like an old television theme show song, like a Mary Tyler Moore kind of thing in a way. But yeah, I like that. I liked the beat quite a bit. It was a really good beat. I will also say the vocal line on the hook was instantaneously catchy. Now I'm a little torn on that because what I did not like about the chorus is that I think the vocal delivery on it was just a little too nasally. I thought that it was a bit of, a somewhat grating inflection on the singing there. I get the doubled up vocals. It does pop very nicely, but maybe the other vocal that you're adding there, if you sung it with a different inflection that isn't quite so, it won't, and look, this is just my opinion. It looks like a lot of people in chat fucked with it. Maybe they're entirely fine with that, but just, to my ear, in my opinion, the vocals on the hook could be a little bit better. I think the inflection's just a tad bit off. As far as another technical thing, I think that the, mixing and presentation of the two guest verses was a little off as well. I know in collaborating with people, especially online, and everybody's kind of working with their own mic, their own setup, and everybody has their own version of mic etiquette. Thank you for the sub. It can be a little difficult to get everybody's vocals kind of consistently sounding the same. That's even seemingly hard for platinum selling rappers when you listen to their tracks and then, oh, Lil Wayne features here. And then it sounds like Lil Wayne is like, rapping at you through a fucking gaming headset. So, obviously, look, they're mainstream, they're label signed artists that have a fucking problem with that. I'll say the vocals here sounded more consistently alike than I've heard on some label tracks and I've heard on some mainstream tracks. So I'm not going to ride you too hard on it or anything, but I think, you could at least like get things a little bit more in the ballpark of similarity because the Frank verse and the Nothing But Lag verse, if that is in fact the second verse, I'm assuming it is, felt a little like claustrophobic, a little too much in your face, a little too overbearing in comparison with the first verse. I liked how I liked the storytelling of the first verse. And, the waking up from that sort of dream sequence that was being presented lyrically, I thought was really cool. And I liked how each artist here lyrically, especially with Frank kind of tying it up on the back end, really kind of like stuck to a theme. I thought that was also like a really good quality of the track as well. I like that, it wasn't just almost like a disconnected sort of collaboration where you have everybody just kind of rapping about whatever the fuck they feel like rapping about. Everyone had an idea. There was a concept for the track and everyone followed through with it. To me, the track stylistically reminded me a little bit of like some early, like very nerdy rap shit, like Milo, I would say. Chorus read as like a little Joji stylistically. And again, the instrumental had like this almost like 70s horn soul sample kind of quality to it, but with some added dreamy keys and a laid back beat. Overall, I thought the track was pretty good. Had a lot of good qualities to it. Like the last one, there were some aspects that I think could be altered and smoothed out and adjusted, but overall it's a very thoughtful, direct, well-structured, cogent song with some decent verses on it and real follow-through on the concept. So I dig it. And shout out to Nick for sending this through. Shout out to McFarlane for getting it in front of me. Let's give this track a try. Again, it's titled Rainbow Tapes, and see what we are working with. Ba-bam.
You don't know how.
Okay. Thoughts on that? First, I'll try to address, I guess, the sound of the song that's distracting to me a little bit. The whole layout, sonically and frequency-wise, of the track feels like very scooped to me, meaning that I'm either getting sounds that are very, very far on the low end, especially that bass, which is like the most prominent, or I'm getting all of these sounds like in the high end that are so thin and trebly that they're almost like, I guess, drowning each other out a little bit, whether you're talking about the vocals or the snares or some of those swirling psychedelic arpeggios that are just like really, really quiet. Find a way to make some of this stuff take up the mid-range. Like fill up the mids. The mids feel really empty. The mids on this track feel incredibly empty. Meanwhile, the bass is down here bumping with really not enough kick drum to kind of like support it. It's like you've obviously got a beat going on, like make the beat a bit busier, kind of fill out those rhythmic gaps so the bass doesn't feel like it's kind of holding up the entire rhythm section. You know what I mean? And then from there, it's like, don't have so much, again, like up in these higher frequencies kind of crashing into each other and kind of overlapping in a really aggressive way to the point where they're almost like fighting for attention up here. Again, fill up those mids, EQ some stuff so it's not so thin and trebly and kind of like, taking up this really open range of frequency you've left right smack dab in the middle of the track. Outside of that, I'll say, I thought instrumentally there were some interesting things going on. I liked that I was hearing like a little bit of like touches of Tame Impala and Animal Collective. The vocals, in a way, almost had like a goofy, lovable Jonathan Richman type vibe to them a little bit in a way. But structurally, the track was, I don't know, kind of falling over itself at a few different points. Like I liked the things you were transitioning into, but the transitions you presented seemed like a little sudden and sloppy and without like, a proper, I guess, introduction to a new idea. It felt almost like, random or unpredictable. Or by the time it transitioned, I felt like I wasn't really getting enough of a sense of what you'd presented so far before you just like, bam, here's like a crazy, how did I write it down? Like all of a sudden we were in this territory where it's this glitch trap psych. Hey, thank you for the sub. This glitch trap psych mash together, which again is like, I can't really think of too many artists doing that. Fucking go for it. Go for the gold. Make the best glitch trap psych shit that you can. It was just a very sudden, Mafia, appreciate it. It was just very sudden and, like almost like a breakneck change, into that sound. And, maybe there's a more effective and seamless transition to make those two worlds seem more, existing in a way that's more harmonious, as opposed to just like that very hard and aggressive, blah, like explosion. And, I guess that's an approach that you could take as well. Explosion, I suppose, is an answer too. But if that's going to be the case, then like really blow the whole shit up. Like make it, this cornucopia of sound that sort of opens up a new world where voila, glitch trap psych with the rattling hi-hats. So yeah, I think there were a lot of interesting sounds presented. It was very colorful. There are just some elements about the structure that I think could be smoothed out. And there are some elements about the sound of it overall that could be smoothed out to where everything doesn't need to sort of be either hanging down near the bass or so trebly and bright. It's almost like a little blinding. You know what I mean? Find some sonic balance, as you're kind of mixing and EQing things. And, I think one obvious, thing is, that piano is obviously, not to, riding too high as far as like a, frequency goes, like maybe have that be one of the instruments that, takes up the mids a little bit, louder and kind of, fills in that gap that again, just feels a little scooped, but I'll leave it at that. I thought the track had, some cool qualities to it, and shout out to, Nick Stead for, sending it through. Good Cyrus. Come Down is the title of the song. Let's give this a try. We'll pop on a few more after this. Okay. Thoughts on that one? So far, I will say that is probably, it's not perfect, but that is, quite easily the entree. Thank you. That is quite easily the cleanest and most well put together mix of the night. If you guys want to hear like a basic, like very effective placement of your lows, of your highs, yeah, sure, like the kick drum is hitting a little maybe too aggressively for a track this kind of spacious and intimate. And there are a few points where maybe I'll say that, that snare could maybe use a little bit of reverb on it as well. You know what I mean? Some of the percussive elements maybe sound a little too dry for something this spacious and this kind of like open, but for the most part, like this is a really good mix. The vocals are nice and crisp. That bass line comes through really nice and clean. It's well put together. It's clean. It's clear. Yeah. I mean, it's a well put together, assembly of sounds. I even kind of liked, those buzzing, little distorted leads that you had kind of weaving into the track here and there that felt very Kanye influenced. But obviously, I think the biggest influence on this track is like very clearly The Weeknd. Like this is some early Weeknd stuff all the way. Which listen, if you're an up and coming songwriter, an artist, like obviously you got to start somewhere. We all have our influences. You know what I mean? So I mean, what I'll say to you is, in response to, having kind of called that out, is that, once you've gotten so far that, you've very effectively like emulated a sound and you've emulated it here pretty well. You've done a good job doing that. Now that you've gotten to this point, which does require a certain level of practice, focus, and talent to even get here, from here you want to ask yourself, okay, now that I understand how to do this from scratch and I can get to this point creatively and I can recreate this sound that obviously it means a lot to me and I love and influences me. Now that I've done that, where do I take it from here? How do I evolve it? How do I change it? How do I make it my own? How do I put my own spin on it? Because if you're not asking yourself that question, most likely you're going to end up kind of, just kind of falling into the wave, falling into the tide of all the other artists who are trying to emulate the very same things. So ask yourself that question. And the other question I think, you should ask yourself is, I'm writing this track, I'm laying down a pretty good vocal performance here, and now I have a hook coming up. How am I going to make sure that my chorus is kind of popping and is standing out amongst, the rest of this track? That may require a different vocal approach. That may require an instrumental change of some sort. But honestly, that's not something I'm going to ride you on, too hard at this point, because a lot of, those early tracks on like House of Balloons were very one-dimensional instrumentally and very much about kind of like, wallowing in a spacious, melancholy kind of vibe. So, I think even that, is sort of like kind of carrying over onto this track as well. Which again, I think, you're doing a very good job kind of like bringing these sounds to life in your own song, in your own mix. How do you push it from there? How do you evolve it from there is, I guess, sort of like the question from here, as far as like a performance, performative thing, I would continue, working on your vocals as well. They're not bad, but, if you're going to have a track that kind of vibes this hard, I think at least one thing that you could do to kind of vary things up is, have some, some more standout vocal passages or passages that really kind of like shine or might wow the listener or something like that. Create at least a peak or a valley emotionally, vocally, if the track is going to be so, one note or meditative instrumentally, or, not vary too much in terms of song structure either. But, still commend heavily this mix over here, and good Cyrus's ability to certainly strike up a vibe and, emulate a sound very effectively. So there's still a lot to commend about this track regardless. So thank you very much for submitting it and sharing it. All right, so Phoenix James, People I Don't Like. Well, this should be a strongly opinionated track. J Knapp, appreciate it. All right, Desire Satisfaction is the EP, came out last year. 6 tracks on it. Let's see what this opener is like. People I Don't Like. Okay, thoughts on that one. Guitar sounded really good. Guitar sounded pristine and pretty, and I loved the tone on those quite a bit. You mixed the guitars really well. The beat was also mixed really well. I liked that, it was a beat, but, you picked percussive sounds and you assembled them in such a way to where it didn't necessarily sound like a beat. It didn't sound like, a super, unnatural, rigid, like sequenced rhythm, which I liked quite a bit. Queen Wap, appreciate it. I don't know if it was like, sort of like a beat or a loop that you were working with. I'm assuming a beat, but I liked that it, mostly sounded like a very natural groove and, natural for the sound of the track that you were going for. Stylistically, this reminded me, I don't know if you're very much J. Russ, thank you, very much into this band, but a lot of it sounded very much like Beach Fossils to me. Had a very Beach Fossils kind of vibe to it, a spacey, melancholy, post-punky vibe, but bring it to the shore kind of vibe to it, which I thought was cool. I mean, I think that sound is pretty nice. Generally, I do fuck with some of that band's stuff. I think obviously you could be doing more to put your own spin on it, but I think it's a pretty decent sound all around, and you definitely captured it to a degree. The vocals, I think could be higher. Obviously you're not trying to do too much with them being as kind of low key and as forlorn as they are. But I mean, from the sound of it, it does feel like you're putting at least something into the lyrics and you're not trying to drown the vocals out in too much reverb or anything. So why not pop them up a little bit, especially since there's not that much in the mix to listen to. You've got the guitar layers, you've got the bass, you've got the drums, you've got the vocals. I mean, maybe if you were adding some other things into the mix to make it more shoegazy or whatever, or just more of like a textural thing, more of just a straight vibe, I mean, I suppose the vocals would be fine where they are, but if you're going to leave this mostly as is, why not pop them up? Why not pop them up a little bit? The other things that I will become a little bit of a stickler for, though, obviously, one, the bass. I feel like you got to work on that bass playing, make it more smooth, make the bass playing smoother. And nothing really kind of, wrecks the vibe of a track like this more than that bass crunching the fuck away, because I don't know what, like the way that you're playing it, you're kind of like slapping the strings into the neck. Now, again, that could be a lot, that could have a lot to do with the fluidity of your playing. Another way that you can kind of circumvent that a little bit, if you're really going to like not do another take on this bass, you could take the bass and, in the mix, in post, you could turn the treble down, because guess what? All those crunchy, disgusting clicks and slides that are like, overtaking the vibe of your song. They're all up here in the high end, and the stuff that you want, that nice round, full, warm, low bassy tone, it's all down here in the low end. So round down the treble so we don't hear those disgusting clicks and slides and like just jaggedly popping their way into the mix. Now look, there's songs and musical styles where that sounds pretty good, like in a fucking punk song, and you're just railing away on that fucking bass with a pick, and it sounds noisy and nasty as fuck. But you've got a really relaxed, spacey, chill jam here. The other thing I'll say, it's noise pop, dark hyper pop, really. The other thing I'll say is that I feel like there could have been more variations on the beat, especially considering you had some notable and creative and, necessary, I could see that you had stuff bubbling up here as you were transitioning from one section of the track to the next, from the verse to the chorus and so on and so forth. You had nicely put together transitions on the bass, because you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to write a section here to kind of move us into the next section. The bass is going to signal a movement, a change. I'm going to have this build up and transition into the next thing. But what's the beat doing? The beat's either doing the same thing, or it's dropping off, or something else is happening. And, you have the bass doing something, signaling a change as a part of the rhythm section. You should also have the drums signal something, some kind of change in the rhythm section. Come up with a fill, do a little snare dealy, do something where the bass syncs up with the drums, come up with a drum pattern or a beat section that follows those baseline alterations that you were coming up with, so that when the change does occur, you actually feel that transition into the next part of the song. Outside of that, though, I thought there were a lot of, good things about the track. Obviously, everything positive I said about, the track up until then remains. Thank you. I'm glad that you guys dig the shirt. And or both. Appreciate it. But yeah, I thought there were a lot of good qualities to that track. It was a chill, again, melancholy, beachy, dreamy rock jam. And shout out to Phoenix James for sending it along. All right, Joey Calvo. Hey, it's Joey. All right, let's hear this track from Joey, 10 seconds, and see what Joey's got to offer.
It's kinda scary how people turn out.
Okay, Joey! Thank you, Joey. Joey Calvo. He sounds like an Italiano bambino, if I'm to guess. But yes, that track, 10 seconds. Though it did last 3 minutes and 29 seconds, bit of false advertising, Joey. Bit of false advertising. Good. That's my biggest complaint off the bat. Okay. Second complaint, is obviously, I don't know what you guys were talking about in chat prior to the track, but the hi-hats, Joey. The hi-hats. I think you could pick a different hi-hat. I think they're a little dry. They are mixed a little high. And on top of it, look, I could tell that you're trying to get a swing rhythm in with them. I don't know what program or DAW you're using, but, usually there is an option to add a swing to the rhythm. And even if that is not an option, there are other things that you can do or other beat variations you could work up in order to make that happen. I think one of the things that you could do, honestly, to get a somewhat similar sensation in is to maybe strip that hi-hat rhythm back a little bit and get some bass in there. Like, you could add some swing with a bass line that you're already playing keys, get some synth bass in there, get a bass line in there, and get some kind of swing going with that. There's different approaches that you could take, but honestly, you should be able to add some kind of swing to that rhythm for sure. Beyond that, I loved the chord progression. I thought you were singing a good tune over that chord progression too. I think, the timbre and emotional delivery of your voice was pretty compelling and beautiful much of the time. I would warn you, though, with some of the background vocals that you're throwing in. Much of the time, they were pretty nice and they were harmonizing, but there were some moments like around the 105 mark, around the 120 mark as well. A few moments as well where there was a chord change on the piano. I couldn't quite tell what was going on. There was a chord change on the piano, and it's like you had some background vocals going already, and the vocals needed to make that change as well, but maybe they didn't make it quite at the same time, or they sort of made a somewhat awkward or sloppy transition over to that chord. And as a result, there was like a moment, there was maybe like a split second or so where everything wasn't completely harmonizing. Those spots you really need to tighten up, so that there's not so much swishing. And I sort of saw the whole thing as almost like water, sloshing back and forth aggressively in terms of one chord kind of vocals not really harmonizing with what you were doing with the keys at certain points. And when you are doing a background vocal, considering how open and delicate this track is and the chord progression is and the vocals that you're doing are, you have to consider that there's not a lot sort of in this mix filling up sound. So you're going to hear every sound, you're going to hear every mistake, you're going to hear every blemish. So when you are going to throw a background vocal in there, don't just riff, have it be very purposeful. You're obviously very meticulous and thinking a lot about what is the melody going to be with my lead? This is how exactly I'm going to sing it. But it sort of seems like whatever you're doing in the background, you're just kind of throwing it out there. Have the background vocal be as purposeful, even if it's just the background vocal, because again, it's still adding a layer, it's still adding a harmony, and you want that harmony to be clear and ring true. Make sure that background vocal is purposeful, and you're not just kind of throwing stuff out there to fill up space. You know what I mean? Because sometimes space can be good, especially if your lead vocal is really good. There is such a thing as just kind of a very stripped back, spotlit, dramatic ballad that doesn't have a lot to it other than maybe a beat, some keys, and a voice. I could tell that toward the end of the track, you really kind of wanted to have things crescendo a little bit, but what ended up happening, for at least to my ears anyways, you really kind of ended up smothering the lead vocals a little bit in some of the vocal layers and, the keys. While I appreciate what you were obviously going for there, just remember it's the lead still has to shine through all that. And I think, at least one obvious way that could have been overcome is, I think toward that part of the track, I mean, look, I'm not hearing everything vocally I think you have to offer on this track, you could sing a little harder. You could still sing a little bit more passionate to, just like really kind of turn up the heat effectively at that point in the song to, kind of make that ending a peak, the peak that you were clearly trying to make it by throwing on all those layers. Have the emotion in your voice and your performance match that, create a peak emotionally as well. If you're going to throw all those layers on to create a bit of a sensation or a crescendo or something. But yeah, I thought the track had a beautiful chord progression, some very impressive spots as far as like the lead vocals go, through the track, and, a cool vibe all around. There's just some things in terms of like the layering, some of the background stuff, the beat, especially that hi-hat that, needs to get worked on. But I thought there were some cool elements to the track all around. All right, we have one more from a Rai 108. Got this track up on Bandcamp. Real Self is the title. Let's see what the Rai guy has to offer before we go bye-bye. Ba-bam. Rai. What are you doing to me, Rai? Rai. That was all over the place, Rai. That was all over the place. Although, it was clear you were going for something very abstract. There was almost something, God, what is the title of it? That record. Some of you guys are like up my ass all the time. I gotta look it up. Cause I don't want to get the title wrong. The one, that you guys are some of you are mad at me for not, enjoying. Bon Iver, 22 a million. That's what some passages of that sounded like a little bit to me. It was, very spacious, melodic, but it had kind of like those banging abstract electronics going on. As far as like the mix goes and everything, I'll say that the vocals did feel maybe just a little too overbearing. I guess you need to take into account that like the auto-tune is fine, but just, remember that when you use auto-tune on a vocal in the way that you are, it's really going to make that vocal pop really aggressively. And if you want people to also be paying attention to everything else that's going on in the mix, you're going to need to balance that a little bit better. I thought that, what was going on rhythmically and sonically was pretty cool. I mean, maybe the first leg of the track, the only spot that stuck out to me were those really high-pitched descending tones that you had going on around the 46-second mark. The way they started kind of dripping down and sort of like, changing in key in a way, changing in tone during that transition point, it sort of fell out of harmony with everything else going on. It almost felt like nails on a chalkboard to me a little bit. Maybe there's a better transition that could be come up with at that point. But overall, I felt like that whole first leg vocally, rhythmically, and with everything else that you were doing just felt like a very exciting, driving jubilee of sound. Again, a lot like that Bon Iver stuff. It felt very futuristic. It felt very groovy. It was very forward thinking, almost utopian in a way. There's something like kind of heavenly and welcoming and inviting about it. And something that feels like almost like slightly gospel inspired as well. It was like, there was like a heavenly quality to it, too, that I would like to note. The other spot that stuck out to me is like, that could use an alteration or something is that section around the midpoint where you sort of just like dropped a lot out that you were working with, especially that beat. And, for a second that was exciting, because it seemed like, okay, is there like a great change about to occur or something? And then everything that you brought past that point was more or less like a variation of what we had heard up until then. Maybe whatever change you present past that moment in time could be greater, starker, more ambitious. Again, it sort of felt like a variation of much of what we were hearing so far. But to my ears, it didn't feel like the momentum had picked quite back up once you dropped the beat back in and you kind of got things going again. It felt almost like you had a good pace going up until that point, and then you sort of just like threw it out just to, sort of like knock the track off its feet in a way. So, I think if you are going to have a transition there, and hey, I think the fact that you did do a transition of any sort is a show that you're thinking, and a show that, you want some variation to happen. It's certainly more thought than is required when you're like, yeah, okay, I came up with a groove here. I'm just going to copy and paste that for 4 straight minutes and it's not going to change. So clearly it's like, you're ambitious enough to, okay, I got to create some kind of radical change here. But, keep in mind, like, you've only gone 2 minutes and 28 seconds with this track so far. You don't need to like pack, I'm not saying the track is shit. You don't need to pack 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. Give your ideas, space to kind of change and grow and evolve. And if you are going to come up with some kind of great alteration section, where it's going to transition into something else, make sure that transition is worth it when we get to the other side of it. And, make sure that, you've really built up to that transition. So tensions are high. And whenever that transition does occur, it's like cathartic and exciting. And it's like, whoa, I never saw that coming. I feel like by the time that transition occurs, the track is just so wild and, full of so much energy. It's like we barely had time to almost like take that in, So yeah, still, I liked the, I guess, kind of experimental, adventurous qualities of this track. And I thought it had a lot going for it. It was certainly the most abstract piece of the night that we had listened to. And thank you very much, Rai, for sending it in. Thank you very much, man. All right, guys, thank you very much for coming through. I'm sorry, we couldn't play like 50 tracks, but, I have some other stuff I got to get done. But I still appreciate you guys coming through, and it seems like we mostly had a very chill time doing this. I'm very glad it was a positive experience for everybody all around. And I'm hoping to, do more of these because they seem like, really cool chill sessions and, hangout sessions to do these. I hope everyone's having a good day, having a good evening, and I'll catch you guys again. Shout out once more to McFarlane. For getting all these submissions in and making sure logistically everything on the back end is functioning, working well. And God bless, yes, that's right, God bless McFarlane. And and he do be streaming. That is true, he do be streaming. So, certainly you guys can check out his profile, check out his page, give him a follow, give him a sub. And, also we'll on YouTube link to his Twitch page down below, as well as ours. And on YouTube, if you are watching this on YouTube, we will link down below to all of the music we talked about in this reviewing your music. So you guys can check it out for yourselves and support these artists, see what they're doing, see what they have to offer. And yeah, you guys are the best. Awesome. All right. Love you. Anthony Fantano. Forever.